Now I want to like to know your opinion about Mr. Modi's recent visit to Russia. There was a lot of criticism in the US. On the other hand, Mr. Shashi Tharoor has mentioned that Modi's upcoming visit to Ukraine, which is likely to happen on the 23rd of this month, is a good opportunity to reset ties with the West. So, do you think Mr. Modi's visit to Ukraine can help bring about an end to this war? And do you think US will value India's efforts to bring an end to this war?
I mean, I have been making the case since very soon after the invasion of Ukraine that India is one of the few countries that could position itself as a mediator. There are very few countries that could have that status, just because there are very few countries that have good relations with both Russia and Ukraine. India, of course, has a very special relationship with Russia. Its relationship with Ukraine is very different, but still good. Clearly, the Ukrainians were not happy that Putin went to Moscow and embraced Putin and all that. But yeah, I think that this visit that Modi will make to Ukraine is very important, and the fact that the Ukrainians wanted to invite Modi, even after his visit to Russia, suggests that the Ukrainians might see India as a potential as a country that could potentially play the role of mediator. I think that it's a delicate issue for sure, right? I mean, this gets into a number of questions that are hard to answer. One is, do the warring parties actually want a mediator now? Meaning, are they ready to look to the possibility of ending the war? I'm not sure, quite frankly. But I think that from India's perspective, only if the Ukrainians and the Russians want a third party involvement in trying to end the war, only then could India actually play that role. But perhaps that's one purpose of Modi's visit to Ukraine, to try to get a sense from Zelensky and others there as to what role they would envisage, or what role they would want to envisage for for India. But yeah, I think that the trip to Russia obviously was not something that the U.S. wanted to see. I had argued that yes, it is a tension point, for one of the few tension points for the India-U.S. relationship. But in a sense, it may not be as bad as many people think it is for the U.S.-India relationship, just because you look at how the India-Russia relationship has evolved. I would argue that it's not nearly the trajectory is not as positive and strong as it had been some years ago, in particular because it's been reducing its share of Russian arms over the last few years. And also, as I just noted, India doesn't support the war. Just because Modi embraced Putin does not translate to an endorsement of the war. We know he doesn't support the war. The war does not advance India's interests. And the more Modi takes this position of engaging with Russia and engaging with Ukraine, the more it bolsters its capacity to potentially play that role of a mediator. So we'll see. I certainly hope that there could be some forward movement. I mean, it's just a terrible war, as we can all agree. And any effort to try to position yourself to bring the sides together to talk and to talk about de-escalation, that would be a good thing.
Where I was disappointed is that India, according to me, should have stepped up more diplomatically to bring an end to this war, because Turkey has been more influential and has put more efforts to bring an end to this war. So, do you have any opinion about that?
I mean, it is true that one could argue that India might be uncomfortable to an extent in taking that role of a third party mediator, even though Prime Minister Modi himself has suggested that India would be ready to play that role if the parties wanted him to. But you look at India's own policies. India is not a big fan of third party mediation. When it comes to Kashmir, for example, it has no interest in that. So yeah, I think that it might be a bit uncomfortable in terms of playing that role. But again, this is a war that does not at all advance its interests. It draws Russia closer to China. It puts a lot more pressure on India as it tries to balance its relations with the U.S. and the West and Russia. Um, it causes economic impacts and so on. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. It does seem that the other number of small countries, the small number of other countries that could potentially pitch themselves as mediators, have perhaps been more overt and explicit about wanting to do that. But I don't think that rules out India. But perhaps the challenge for India is really getting through to Ukraine, just because India's relations with Russia are so much stronger than they are with Ukraine. It's not that it's a balanced dynamic by any means. That's why I think that this visit that Modi will make to Ukraine is so important. I mean, if he'll have an opportunity to deliver this message to his Ukrainian interlocutors that, look, we may have a strong relationship with Russia, we value our relationship with you as well, and we want to bring the two sides together to de-escalate. But yeah, I mean, Turkey's in a very different position than India is. But I don't see why India, if the conditions were right, couldn't put itself out there more to play that role of a mediator.
Completely agree with you.